Hi everybody, Bus Old Man Phil here. We're out at Richfield Bus Company in Bloomington, Minnesota, and standing next to me is Stan Holter, the president of Richfield Bus Company and the chief CEO of Bus Boys Collection. And we're here today because Stan is dying to tell us about all of the wonderful buses he's collected over the last 5 years. 100 and how many?
We haven't compiled the complete list yet. We're at 108 right now and still adding to the list as we go through and update the roster, but there's less than 10 more buses to go probably.
Now, any of you folks that have hoarding grandpas and grandmothers understand what this is. The only difference between stacking furniture and magazines and canary cages is this takes more than a house and a yard. This takes acres, sites, dozens of sites throughout the country to gather this collection of buses. Anyway, so we're here in the south lot of Richfield Bus Company as Stan wants to show us his collection here in Bloomington, Minnesota. Stan?
Well, as I often say, this is not just a passion, it's an obsession. And anyway, Phil wanted us to do this for his YouTube, and here we are. We got a few buses to look at. First one we're standing in front of is the 1941 PDG 3701. This was originally delivered to Northland Greyhound here in Minneapolis, and we found it fairly local. It was here in Minnesota. I bought it originally thinking, when I heard about it and saw some photos, I thought it would just be a parts bus, but brought it home, and after going through it, the bus is too complete and too nice, and we've kept it for some time, and we're actually at a point where we have so many Silversides and so many buses in general, we no longer plan to keep this bus. So we do have it listed for sale, and it'll probably be going down the road fairly soon, but it's an old conversion into a motorhome, and we can walk around and take a look at the exterior quick.
If people are interested in any of these buses, should they contact you through busboyscollection.org?
Yes. So we do have a bus website, busboyscollection.org, and we're in the process of updating that as well. Right now, currently, we're working on our Bus Boys store. We're adding parts. We have such a huge supply and stock of mostly GM parts, but we're trying to update that and get as many items on there that we have available, that we have excess of, that we're willing to let go. No different than buses. We've got a bunch of buses now that we've decided, with the number of buses we have, the time to get to every one of them is never going to happen in our lifetime. So let somebody else have the opportunity and make their dream out of whatever might come to fruition for them, and we'll keep moving on with our projects and go from there. So I don't know if you want to walk around and just do a quick
you lead the way.
view of the bus. This bus is actually a very straight, complete bus. There's a few little pieces that are missing or broken, which we have all the parts for, but lights, there's a few lenses that are missing, that's about it.
Love the marker light lenses, real glass lenses.
It's got some broken side sash, which we also have, but it's flat glass, you can have it made. The back end is locked. Oh no, back end is open, so we can get a brief look at the engine. But I think it's latched, Phil.
Is it?
Yeah. That's all right. We don't have to.
Okay.
It's just a quick peek, but had Phil working on this a couple weeks ago and had the bus running. We actually never had run it through the few years that we have owned it until just recently, and Phil got it running. Seems to run good. Smokes like they all do, but it's been sitting so long with old fuel. But it's really straight. I mean, there's very few dings on it. There's a couple little spots that a little bit of corrosion, but not bad either. If you want to step on up in there and got all the updated interior with that's a joke, son. The vintage seating. I actually had somebody contact me and ask if they could buy the seats in here, which I'm not going to do until I know if somebody doesn't want the stuff if they buy the bus. I'm gonna let you walk by me so I'm not in the way. It's a typical older conversion. Everything, the basics are all in here. But the reality is, depending on if you want to keep some of the vintage items, there's everything pretty much needs to be replaced and updated.
The silver side. Oh, let's stay with the same type.
Number 308. Okay.
This is a nice silver sides here. This is one of my summer projects. I had proposed this one to be our office bus when we go on tours around the country. Like our, by the way, do I have this one on? Is this the, oh, this is a G. Nicolelli. This is the Greyhound Museum in Hibbing, Minnesota. And I was going to mention the 2017 bus extravaganza, the Woodstock, if you will, of the classic bus community in Indianapolis in 2017. And you can find that on YouTube, the parade and pretty much the activities around. So check that out when you have time. And okay, Stan, back to you.
All right, so here, this is another one of our silver sides. We've got, I think, 6 silver sides in our collection, but this is a 1948 3751, originally a Southwest Greyhound, and we found it out in Colorado and bought it and a trailer load of excess silver side parts. So I went out and I drove this bus home from Colorado, and I went back and I picked up a vintage Kenworth truck, and I went down and picked up the trailer load of silver side parts and brought it home. This bus is actually, we've got some pieces, we are currently working on it on and off. We've got some pieces that are pulled off the coach, but another really nice clean straight body. We're going to restore this one as it originally was in the Greyhound livery. The interior has been semi-converted, and we plan to keep the semi-conversion. We're going to do some reconfigurations in it, but don't know how much of the bus we're going to be able to see. It's parked in here such where we can't really access it. So
You see, it looks like your dad is bringing paint cans in.
yeah, I don't know who brought that, but
Oh, well,
Sure.
guess. 3 guesses.
I don't know that we want to go in.
Why not?
Well, because it's a mess.
We're not going to go in all of us, but some of these are worthwhile looking at. Because this is a fairly decent.
Well, this is one of those that's a mess. I'm gonna let you go up in there because I get ahead and then you're not gonna see. So we're going to keep the layout somewhat similar. We're going to remove the countertop, some of those cabinets. We're debating whether to leave a restroom in here, but we're going to seat this coach with about 20 of the original seats, and the rear will be a horseshoe wraparound seating, kind of like a lounge car almost, a railroad car that we plan to use similar upholstery. At least of the era, it won't be original upholstery that Greyhound would have had, which is near impossible to come by anyway. You can see the builder plate on here. Unfortunately, it's sorry for the mess in here. Since we're working on it, we've got parts kind of strewn everywhere.
Is that how the builder's plate? I don't remember.
Builder's plate is right here on the door. PD 3751 139. It's plenty visible. Okay.
You going that way?
Want to do this one next, Stan?
Yeah, you can get a little bit of the front of it.
All right, let me get out of the way.
Yeah, right. Well, here again, we got a bunch of buses back here in this lot that are so packed together we're not going to get a good view at. This is a 1950 flexible Visicoach. Like myself, a lot of people didn't know until they were told, but the only real difference between a Visicoach and a Clipper, they have the same body. But the side windows, the Clipper had 8 small side sash, and the Visicoach has 4 large. And there was only, to my knowledge, 1950, and I may be wrong, but 50 was the only year that they had this grill on the front.
My parents had a 51 with those on there.
Okay, so there you go.
These were the grills on buses that were not equipped with air conditioning. They had the extra fresh air scoop if they did not have air conditioning. It was optional at that time.
My understanding, the way I was told, and here again, there's so many different stories out there, and what we hear, who knows what's correct, but Flexible came up with this idea and tried it, and they said that the problem was that it worked too well. It let so much air in, it was also letting too much dust and dirt inside, so they discontinued it. Whether that's correct, I don't know, but that's what I was told.
Which powertrain is in this one?
This one still has the original Buick straight 8. We found this bus out in Pennsylvania. Can't remember the town, but it was we had it brought to Mechanicsburg, and I had somebody work on it to kind of prep things ahead of time before we got out there. Since the bus was in good running condition, sent it to a shop and had them do a tune-up. We got out there, Phil and I, and we found some more issues and spent 2 or 3 days working, replacing components, just trying to get it roadworthy enough to drive home. And we set off with it, and I think we made about 130 miles in about a 14-hour period, with all the additional issues that we had with ignition. It was primarily the ignition, and of course out there heading west coming home, not much choice for the most part, if you want to make any time anyway, but to use the turnpike. So we're on the turnpike, and we get 2-3 hours into the trip and start having some hiccups and tinkering, and we kept going. Now it gets late, gets into the late night and wee hours in the morning, and the access on the turnpike is limited, resources are limited. So ultimately we ended up, I think we found 2 or 3 coils that we tried, and decided to give up the Ghost and park it and have it hauled home. So this is, I think, the only bus that I've attempted to drive home that I didn't make it. So I've brought buses home from all over the U.S. and MacGyvered my way most every time with different components, but we just knew that this one was just too extreme for the problems that we're having, and decided to haul it home and finish it here.
So when we got here, I bought an electronic ignition system and installed it, and the engine runs perfectly now. I wish we could have done that before we left Mechanicsburg. So anyway, let's move on to the next bus.
Okay.
Here's the inside of the Flex, the 50 Flex.
Show the instrument panel too. Slowly.
This is a 51 GM PD 4103. This one is one that we brought home. We found it down in a little teeny tiny town called Codell, Kansas. Phil and I went down, and with some other people got the engine running. The bus had been parked. The guy had been in business for 50 years, retired in '79, parked it, and walked away from his fleet. And it's 2000, I don't know, 1 or so, probably a little bit later. Anyway, got it running, and we had it hauled home and have done an extensive amount of work on it. It's not completely finished. The exterior was finished, and now the interior, though it's still seated and in fair condition. We would like to find new upholstery again for this coach, but we drove this bus up to Hibbing when we helped do a Gathering of Buses show with Charles Watchering, and outside of that we haven't driven this bus around away from the area here too much, but had it to some local shows. So this is a 1960 GM PD 4104. This was originally delivered to San Diego. It ran new there for who knows how many years, but it had been through, like all buses for the most part, a number of different companies. And Tom Evans bought it, and he lives out in Spokane, Washington, and he's a real bus enthusiast. And he restored this coach and donated it to our busboy collection. And we've had this bus all over the country for some shows, and the interior, we'll take a step inside. I need to move some of the sunscreen items off the dash. We're moving this sign, but I'll actually show it. So Tom did a beautiful restoration on this coach. We're trying to move some of these items out of the way that we use for kind of a sun shield, but might as well show this one for the heck of it. The Bus Boys is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so we do take donations, whether it be equipment or funds, finances, to help us further the vintage fleet along. So anybody interested to help the endeavor to preserve some of these old buses, we're always appreciative. This is another GM 4103. This one is unrestored. We found it out in Colorado and had it hauled here, and there's a lot of work to be done. There's no interior, but this is actually another bus we've decided we're not going to take the time. I did obtain a full interior set of seats for it. The luggage parcel racks are missing. Those you'll never find. This is a 1962 flexible high level. Found this one down in Tijuana, Mexico. So I arranged to have it brought to the border, and a friend of mine, Frank Gonzalez, actually met the owner there and did the transaction and took it up to his place in LA. Then I went out to LA and drove the bus home from California. This bus is still fully seated, so it had been updated to some newer upholstery, but we have plans to try to restore it back to its original Trailways livery at some point. So I'll let you go by me and let you go inside. A lot of little trinkets. This bus was, since it was owned by the Mexicans for many years, they like their glitter, and so a lot of things need to be peeled away and stripped off.
5-speed. What powertrain's in this?
This is an inline 671. So this is an example here. This is a flexible. Somebody may have picked up on the Dina nose badge, but Mexicans love their Dinas. So somebody had taken the original flexible plate off and replaced it with a Dina. We have the original for it. We're gonna change it back. This is a 1965 flexible VL100. Very few of these. I know of one other seated one that's still in existence. That's in Hershey at the MOBT Museum. This one we found down in West Point, Georgia. This bus was actually never put into service with a bus company. A furniture company bought it, and the owner wanted something unique that he could take some of his customers and guests and friends, family alike, out on special outings occasionally, and so this bus was never a fully seated coach, but we bought it, had it hauled home. This is another one that we're debating now after having it a few years since we got so many projects. We're not sure if we're going to keep it. We've not put it up for sale, but anything's possible. Anyway, the body is actually in pretty good condition, though there's a lot of rust stains that show. The interior doesn't have much in it. There's a couple of the original seats, but
Powertrain?
powertrain is inline 671, 5-speed transmission. I'll let you get a view of the side. There is some heavily corroded areas between a couple of the windows up above, but nothing that's not repairable. I'll let you go ahead of me and careful, our garage dog is inside there, I think. Oh, it's Phil.
It's Phil. He's actually working.
Oh, good grief.
What are you doing down there?
Well, what I'm doing is lubricating the brake treadle valve and as much of the throttle linkage as I can, and also the hinges on the foot pedals. If you don't do this, the fittings corrode and seize, especially the brake valve. So be sure and move the rubber boot aside if that still has a rubber boot, and get oil around the treadle valve and on the hinges of the pedals, and also as much of the throttle linkage as you can. And if the bus sits for more than a year, you're going to come out and step on the brake and it's going to stay stepped on. So be sure and keep that lubricated. Use oil. Do not use canned lubricants. They spray on wet and dry out. WD-40 is not a wet lubricant. It only sprays on wet, then evaporates. So use oil. Okay, that's what I'm doing. Now get up so you can get in here and show the whole setup here.
You already got it.
All right. This is another conversion. Oh, by the way, I did get the...
Yeah, we gotta do that to the scenic cruiser too. It's up in the pole and fan. So this is the front end again of the VL100. I just wanted to point out, like the high level that we saw previously, you know, the bodies are virtually the same with the exception of the roof line, but here's an example of the original flexible plate on the front. So in lieu of the other nose badge that the Mexicans put on, this is what belongs on. Flexible had 3 high level versions, of which we have all 3. We'll see another one a little bit later here in the clip. Alright, so this is 1974 MCI MC8. This is another bus that Tom Evans bought and put through his restoration process and completely renovated it and drove it here and donated to the bus boys. The beautiful interior inside is definitely worth going inside and taking a look at. Tom did an extensive amount of work. We did some work on it here as well, cosmetically. After it came, it had square headlights on it. We took the panels, replaced them, put back the original round headlights. This is one of the main coaches that we use when we go out on some of our busboys excursions around the country and do some of our shows and attend others. You can get a quick glimpse of the VIN plate up here. But as you can see, the body's in beautiful condition. Engine, drivetrain, all the same. It's a great running coach. I want to get a quick shot of the back end, maybe the engine as well.
We'll open the door.
Open up the back end quick. Take a peek. Nothing shiny and new about it, but it's your typical 8V71 and Allison automatic. All right, so this is another silver sides again, 1948 PD 3751. Stumbled my words here, but this is a coach that, as you can see, there's some damage both front and back. Unfortunately, tow truck did a number on it, moving it, and that was prior to our ownership, but nonetheless, this is one that we plan to restore. It's fully seated inside, and we've got all the parts to put this back together with, so it's just going to be another project in the near future. Mike Ondecker, who was unfortunately passed on here a while back, donated it to the busboys, and Mike was a huge bus enthusiast and a walking encyclopedia of knowledge, but he wanted to make sure it got into our collection for preservation. This one's got an invisible entrance door. Unfortunately, the door bracket somebody busted off. The door is sitting inside here, so we're gonna replace the brackets and get the door rehung back on here. You can step up inside, take a quick peek inside. It has all the seats, all the window shades are still there. We just need to go through everything and tweak, and give it some TLC and clean it up, and get it back on the road. One of the few buses with the complete original dash left intact.
Well, that'll do it for now, folks. I hope you enjoyed this visit to Richfield Bus Company's outside storage, the west lot, and here at the north lot. And here is the shop building, and you can see some of the revenue equipment is parked. We're shut down right now due to the virus thing. And now you're seeing the collection on the west lot, and that's going to wrap it up for now. The next part of this is going to be the office storage area where we have some really neat stuff. So that's coming up next. Stay tuned.